Well, good evening, everybody, to Truth, Family, Health, and Culture. All of our guests, like I mentioned last time, that's Coast Salish laws, Truth, Family, Health, and Culture. Some people recognize the medicine wheel as what Papa and as people go by is the physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. That's part of our law. Truth, Family, Health, and Culture is our law in Coast Salish territory, and that's our work revolves around. I'm lucky enough that I worked with a lot of really wonderful people in Tsleil-Waututh Nation that abide by this law, whether they're working for economic development, housing, social services, or education, and like we do here, of course, with Sacred Trust. So we're partnered here with Sacred Ecology. Give a wave to our beautiful Christine.
Hello.
She's down in Boulder, Colorado, and of course the handsome Peter McCarthy of the Wilderness Committee is we're also partnering with them. And by the way, they've been our longest partner, the Wilderness Committee, in the last 11 years, standing up to the Trans Mountain Kinder Morgan pipeline. So also for our guest today, we have what not many people know, but I'm his adopted spiritual son, formerly Toshka, which is nephew, now I'm son. So I'd like to have him give me a shout out, Darth Vader style. So
good evening, son.
Yeah.
Your father.
You're my father. Just Star Wars. We have the Force. But we had some really good news this week, and that's what we're going to do, Papa. We're just going to take a couple minutes and we're going to hand it over to Peter and then Christine, and she's going to explain a little bit more about Sacred Ecology. And but Peter, we have some pretty badass updates in our environmental world here in Coast Salish territory. I'll let you go at it. Well, it's North American news, isn't it? World news. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, lots going on this week, and so just this afternoon, there was a report that dropped from the Transportation Safety Board about an oil spill that Trans Mountain had last June, and Trans Mountain originally said, "Oh, this is just a small spill; it's nothing." It turns out it was 1,200 barrels of oil, and that some of that oil ended up getting into the Sumas aquifer. Via sort of a nearby farmer's field. Basically what happened is the spill went down into the culvert below the pump station at Sumas. And, so they always claim, oh, well, the pipeline's been there since 1953. There's never been a spill. This is actually Trans Mountain's 85th recorded spill. And they only have to record spills over 2,000 liters. So, it happens all the time, and there's nothing that's going to be able to restore the Sumas aquifer, the drinking water that people of Abbotsford and the people of the Sumas Nation rely on. But in happier news this week, there's also
Peter.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I make a comment? So I immediately when that happened, you were up there too, as well as I think you were there before me. You were up there that day. And I went up after as an invite from the Chief Dalton Silver of Sumas. And we went and looked at the spill, and he started pointing at all the homes with wells. And the aquifer, because what he's explained to me, if you look at where that area is, for hundreds of yards, it dips. It has a big dip. And he said, a lake used to be here. Now it's an aquifer. And all the houses, and he pointed at all of them, he said they're all connected to wells, and now all their drinking water, the bathing water, is polluted. And that's what we're looking at. These disasters and the analysis that you see, like Tsleil-Waututh Nation, the spill analysis we did, it explains these things. A million people who get sick, a spill happens in our traditional territory, and 500,000 birds die. And look at how long has it been, Peter? 30 years since BP, and everything's still dead there. So we know what happened. So I just want to share that little bit, and and it's a disaster, and we can't stand for this, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. The facts are there. So thank you, Peter.
Yeah, you bet. And we know a spill is inevitable, if this pipeline's built. You have triple the capacity of the pipeline, triple the risk, and 7 times the risk on the Burrard Inlet, because there's 7 times the amount of tankers coming through. But like I was saying, and in happier news, in the investment finance world, the fight is really heating up, and today, or this week, New York State actually divested their entire pension fund out of tar sands companies. And so, this is a $246 billion pension fund that is no longer going to invest in companies like Imperial Oil, Canadian Natural Resources, Husky Energy, the people that would be filling the Trans Mountain pipeline. So this, really has a direct impact on the campaign that we're seeing here right now. And there's all sorts of sort of financial levers that folks in the movement who are really tuned in and really smart about how they're going about this to try and weaken the support and the capital behind this pipeline. So, divestment is one. If you can get your school, your pension fund, your city to divest from tar sands oil, that'll make this pipeline less and less economic every day. And the other piece that I was going to say in terms of news, Will George, from Ruben's family, was in court last week, and got his court date pushed a little bit, thankfully, but he's just looking for any donations that are possible for someone to fund his legal challenge. His lawyer is excited about this one. He thinks that there's a good case to be made based on title and rights. And so if you can go to the GoFundMe for Will George, you can just Google that and it'll come right up, his legal fundraiser. I know we wanted to get that in. So there's lots of people that are kind of going through the court system right now, and lots of different cases to pay attention to and support. So.
Yeah, we'll post that on Sacred Ecology, Will George's GoFundMe. Just going back to that $246 billion divestment out of the Alberta tar sands is a huge, huge thing. Congratulations to all the great people that worked on it. Congratulations that everybody who did something, everybody who stood up for something. It's such a beautiful thing that, everybody's starting to realize that it doesn't make sense. And here we have Trudeau still pushing it. It's inevitable of a disaster. It's not good for the economy. We did all the studies. We did all this, and it's based on fact. So, I was lucky enough to, the same pension, my chief and some of our staff went to New York, and they spoke to a lot of these what you're talking about, a lot of the people that were putting resources into there, the pension funds, and we said, people are dying, it's horrible, and explained all the facts. And they said, could you be our proxy at the Kinder Morgan AGM in New York? They said that. And then they phoned me and they said, hey, do you want to go to the Kinder Morgan AGM and address Richard Kinder? And I said, yeah. They said, okay, pack your stuff. We're ordering you flight right now, and we want you to be there. It's in Houston, Texas, and they booked it on my taxi over to the airport, and we went in there and we told them what's up. And 3 months to the day that we spoke there, their stock fell by 60%. Their dividends were cut by 74%. So a lot of good things happened at that time, and now really great things happen now. So congratulations to those people that allow us to be their guests and their proxies at the Kinder Morgan AGM, and good on you to look at that. And maybe there's something we could share and update next week. Peter, I'll work on this with you. I saved some news articles of even Enbridge. We'll look at that, where their investment portfolio was 5% into green energy, and I think it was 50% into oil. They reversed those things. So even some of the companies know that the writing's on the wall, that they have to do something to get out of there. And maybe we could talk about the orphaned wells that they leave too. So, but anyway, thank you very much, Peter. I really appreciate the updates. And again, we'll post Will George GoFundMe on Sacred Ecology. What else is up, Peter?
Well, the last thing I wanted to tell you about is, I mentioned the Hummingbird land defenders last week, and the folks that have been out on the ground doing an incredible job monitoring these nests found that Trans Mountain, it turns out, has destroyed at least one, I believe 2 nests, which is illegal in Canada. You can't destroy a migratory bird's nest and an at-risk species. And so, we're kind of seeing where what the regulators are going to do about that one. I think that some of the federal biologists were actually out to see the site, and so we're hoping that that will prevent Trans Mountain from continuing to cut trees around that really sensitive area right by the Brunette River, where folks have been, tree sitting, blocking the gates, locked down to machinery for months now. And so that's another one to watch. And it's just an example of how, everyday residents are the ones that are holding this company accountable for the environmental violations that they're enacting upon the territories where they have no consent. And so, it shouldn't be the job of local folks. It should be the regulator, but in their absence, people are really stepping up to do that good work.
Yeah, and we'll do an update also on the insurance work that's done in our area, Peter. But also just to add a little bit more, it's Timothy Govar, right? Who's up in the tree. Is going to give us a video update of what they're doing and how long they've been, like 118 days today up in the tree. So so I was trying to get a video for today of him doing that, so you could share that, Peter. So but he mentioned to give you a message that he'll send you a video for next week to follow up on what you're saying. People are doing a lot of great things, and that's what we need, because endless resources of a blank check that Trudeau gave to the TMX pipeline to build and use advertisements, and his town hall meetings. The big focus, if we saw it last time, was on the pipelines and fossil fuels, and has bending over backwards and going against what he said in his campaign promises. And it's a shame, because when he was, people were so hopeful when he was at United Nations in Paris, the Paris Accord, and he stood up and said, "Hey, Canada's back." Remember that? He stood up in front of the whole world and said, "Canada's back." And still, climate leaders don't make deals with fossil fuel industry, and that's exactly what it's doing. It's a big problem, and so everybody who's doing something really means a lot, and it adds up to so much. Whether they're up in the trees, and I know there's some events happening going over to the legislative building to address Oregon, because him too was saying, well, within all the power of British Columbia, they're going to stop the pipeline, and I guess that ended pretty quick. So excited, and thank you, Peter, for that great news. I like saying that number. $246 billion divested out of the Alberta tar sands. I can't believe it. Anything else, Peter?
No, I think that about covers it. We can, the one thing I wanted to mention, there is a Liberty Mutual's AGM is tomorrow, one of the big insurers for Trans Mountain. And so they're having a quick rally tomorrow afternoon during the AGM. If you want to find out about it, go to Facebook, and it's the People versus Liberty Mutual. There's lots of great speakers plans.
Can you send that link to Christine so she can put it on Secret Ecology as well?
I sure can. We'll put it in the chat here.
Awesome. Is that it, Peter?
Yep.
Christine, do you want to mention anything about the live stream or what's going on here?
Sure. I mean, I could just give a brief introduction again about Sacred Ecology, or specifically the live stream. Sacred Ecology is a feature-length documentary film project, production company, and online publication dedicated to the importance of cultural and biodiversity preservation. Our mission is to educate people about the importance of earth-based ancestral traditions, Indigenous rights, sacred sites, regenerative organic agriculture, traditional ecological knowledge, the rights of nature, biodiversity preservation, and environmental conservation. Over the last 5 years, we've been elevating the voices of Indigenous elders, cultural leaders, permaculture educators, seed savers, and ecology experts from around the world through documentary films, photography, and now through this live stream series. And yeah, this live stream series, we already have about 20 guests lined up with another 20 lining up after that. So we look forward to all these wonderful people that we will be talking to.
28 guests.
28.
28 for now, for the first 6 months. And then we have more. And I think, and also like to thank our Zoom group, which is our spiritual family that I work with. I think the foundation for sure that the George family works with, and a lot of the work we're doing in Tsleil-Waututh Nation is the backbone behind what we do is our culture and spirituality. So some of the people that joined here are from Vancouver area that I do ceremony with, and they're our Zoom audience. So they're going to have some questions, and I just want to let you guys know you're streaming all over the world, and I'm happy that you guys are here joining me and support again. You're always so supportive and always so helpful, and the mission and the goal that we set for to Tsleil-Waututh Nation to stop this damn pipeline. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't swear like that. That pipeline. So anyway, thank you very much, everybody. And now we'll go to the big bad MC Papa, Hereditary Chief Phil Lane, badass, travel the world, the most coolest guy, Phil Lane Jr. How are you doing, Papa?
Very well, son. Very well.
I want to say a little bit about you. For 45 years, Phil Lane has been connected to the George family through a brotherhood with my mom's brother, Leonard George, who's the former chief of Tsleil-Waututh Nation. And they created a brotherhood. And I know back in that day, it's far in between to find brothers that were so dedicated to spirituality and creating change. But it was neat because you did create a brotherhood and sisterhood with a lot of game changers that really started to create change and make impacts all over North America. And back then, you used to travel a lot. I seen pictures of you with, he just passed away, the Queen Elizabeth's husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. And I remember you guys had a visit with him and a whole bunch of traveling. But more importantly, you've been connected to the George family. And, you know, we talked about going down to your territory and thanking the Huntawan Sioux people for lending you to us, because you've been a staple in our community and helping our community and being with our George family for all these years. That, you know, you are my spiritual father, but your brother to my uncle and to my mom, and uncle to so many of my siblings, and we see you that way and we love you that way. So that's what not many people know, and I just putting that out there that, you know, his in our territory and is taken care of and is well loved and well respected by the George family and all of our family and the people here, all the people here in this our guests in our spiritual family who are in the Zoom also know you as one of our uncles and one of our teachers that consistently, constantly comes and gives us all teachings, spiritual teachings and how to be and how to work. And that's what I'm proud of. Another thing that people don't know about you, everywhere you lived, you got a degree. Harvard, Stanford, and you're associate professor, you know, and that's amazing because you don't really talk about that. What people recognize you as is a spiritual leader. And little do they know you're smarty pants. You got all these degrees from places that you lived, and not to mention, you know, you speak Spanish. And it's pretty handy when we're down in Panama and we're down in Brazil. Even though it's Portuguese, we're still able to order food. We didn't go hungry. To get us a taxi cab and bring us to the airport. You knew enough to do that. So not many people know that, but it's pretty handy with the work that we do down there. I know the first time we went to Panama, it was pretty dangerous, and Chief Sylvia had her life threatened. And again, maybe we'll talk about the story. Your car got shot at 7 times, and it was the cloak and dagger things, because she stopped with the Indigenous people there, 17 of 19 projects, and we're able to witness some of that. And it was good to be with Marcos, the Grand Chief of the Amazonian people in Brazil, and we went to Europe, and it was always good to travel and hang out, and we have fun. We do a lot of pranks on each other. We won't talk about those, right? We have a truce, right? It's a truce
I think so.
for this hour and a half. For this hour and a half, let's call it truce.
We have a truth for those kind of. But there's that one story about you. Oh, I won't say it.
No, I'm just kidding. You won't see me in shame. No, but we have fun. That's the key thing. We have fun. And it's funny too, people will be so polite and so good to us, and they go, excuse me, we have an offering when we're in Sedona, Arizona. We have an offering for you, and and we'll say, for what? We don't need an offering. And they get shocked, and we're going, we're just kidding. We'll take a prayer. It's just having fun. But that broke it, because she's so shy and so nervous that, we made her laugh, and that's the big part of what we do. Even in some of our funerals, things could be sad, but there's people that could make people laugh, and and humor is a big part of it. And so that's just a little bit on Papa Phil Lane, and I'm really happy you're here, and really honored to know you, and to see all the work that you continue to do. And we might even get into the medical things that you and I are hopefully, I know you're into it already, but I want our partners and business partners to work with you on this too. And I think that's amazing. The DNA testing, the metabolic typing, and the naturopath therapy, and the ozone therapy, all that stuff is the way our medical field should have went from the get-go, and that's how we practice as Indigenous people. So it's pretty exciting stuff, that stuff, as well as the environmental work and everything else you do, and the stuff that you're doing with the medical field. I don't know if this is a platform right now, or we could talk about it yet, or we could get into that in a bit, but right now, introduce yourself.
Well, Mitaki Apiatis, really thank you so much, son, for those kind and very loving words. And it has been a tremendous honor for me for the last 45 years to live here on the unsurrendered sovereign territory of the Salish Nation, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Musqueam, and so many more. And in fact, from my perspective, son, across Turtle Island, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of treaties been made. Hundreds. And except one thing, as my uncle Vine Deloria Jr. used to say, they broke every promise except one. They promised to take our land, and they did. Otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, all these treaties have been broken. So in a way, every bit of these sacred lands of our Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island and across the Americas has never been really surrendered, because all the treaties have been broken. So I think we're up for renegotiation. So I was born at Haskell Indian School in Lawrence, Kansas. It's where many children were taken across the United States and from Alaska as well, to strip them of their culture, strip them of their languages. And my mom and dad met there. My dad was 17, my mother was 13. And my dad always said, he said, as soon as I saw your mother, I said, that's the woman I'm going to marry. And sure enough, 10 years later, And, you know, he said, you know, we didn't have, in our day, he said, if you were a man, you always gave horses. Our dowry wasn't the woman gave, the men gave the dowry. So you had, you demonstrated that by horses and so forth and so on. He said, you know, we didn't have the horses, but he said, I was going to go out. And so sure enough, he came back, he said, in 1944, right, at the war, October 1944, came to Sulphur, Oklahoma, because my mother's a member of the Chickasaw Nation. And he had $10,000 he'd saved. And after about 5 years, he got a degree in forestry at Oregon State University. He said, he came with his degree and his money. He said, I've come to claim what's mine. Of course, my mom just kind of, oh, but, you know, they came together. And of course, both my parents come from lineages of hereditary leadership. And, you know, both of them really, I remember my father used to tell me, he said, son, I was born wild, and I'm going to die wild. I don't want any part of Pepsodent toothpaste, Preparation H, Fruit Loom underwear, or Diet Pepsi culture. He said, that's why. He said, son, and he did. He took me away in a little place outside of Walla Walla, Washington, and he wouldn't allow me to interact much. You know, he kept me there working and under his guidance. Because he said, son, he said, I'm sorry. He said, but I didn't want you to lose your wildness. I want you to be colonized. I want you to be tamed. And that's what I appreciate so much about you, son, and all the other relatives sitting here. Michael Harris, so many. We were born wild and going to die wild. Meaning that we don't want to have anything to do with this colonization that separated human beings into all this disunity. It's very interesting. You know, there's 34 nation states across the Americas. We organized ourselves according to bioregions. That is bioregions. The Salish Sea bioregion, we call it Missouri bioregion, Ochete-Chicon bioregion. Every single border of every colonial nation state across the Americas cuts across our indigenous nations. Every one separates. You know what's so amazing is more than 500 years ago, there existed across the Americas the union of the condor, the quetzal, and the eagle. Around 100 million, now scholars are estimating 108 million indigenous people. And because they were so spiritually enlightened, because we lived here in relative peace and harmony while the rest of the world was going through terrible suffering. We lived here in relative peace and harmony. Sure, there were struggles, but truly, we were one across the Americas. All the trade routes, all the highways of today are based on our kinship trails that united us across the Americas. And of course, it was a great wintertime. Estimates are probably over 80 million human beings, indigenous peoples, were lost in this Holocaust that came here. But we know without question, the Creator did not do this to punish us at all. Because we also know, it's like great Salish leader, Chief Seattle said, there is no death, just a change of worlds. So all those relatives are right here with us. And so while this system right now is breaking down, we're breaking through everywhere, all at once, across the Americas and beyond, because we have the same spiritual values and foundation. It's like, I remember in 1982 when we called elders together from across the United States and Canada, across Turtle Island, and between Christmas and New Year's. because we were at a place where we had to make a return, had to make a change. After 4 days and 4 nights of these beautiful elders, I can still see their faces as they sit here, consultation. In essence, what they told us was this. They said this universe we live in is organized according to certain spiritual and physical laws. These physical and spiritual laws are inseparably connected. He said it's easy to understand the physical laws. If you drive 100 miles an hour into a concrete wall, you get smashed up. You drink a big glass full of arsenic, you get a stomachache. Jump off a 10-story building on your head, you're gonna get a headache. But just as real and underlying these physical laws are the spiritual laws. And that's where in 1982 we begin with, by the way, your beloved uncle, my brother, Chief Leonard George. You know, we worked on some great projects together with our beloved relatives in Alkali Lake, the honor of all the story of Alkali Lake. We did that in 1985. First community to leave 100% alcoholism to almost complete sobriety. As well, we worked together on healing the hurts the next year, which was about really understanding what was happening in Canada's residential schools. You know, the sexual, physical, emotional abuse of about 150,000 children, backed by the government of Canada, carried out by the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, and other churches, which we addressed, beginning with that film, Healing the Hurts, my dear brother, our late brother, Phil Lucas. So, yeah, I kind of got going there. But for me, really, it's so important for each of us to understand. We ask, well, who are we? Each of us, every one of us, is the spiritual representative of everyone who's gone before us. We are their spiritual representative here in this physical plane of time and space. And so that's a little bit kind of where I'm coming from.
For sure. For sure, Papa. You know, one of the things I think of is maybe you could share this story a bit, is Panama. I remember we're sitting down with half of the chiefs of Panama. There's a country of 3 million, right? With, was it 500,000 people?
Yeah.
And Indigenous people. And we're sitting there in the ceremony with the chiefs, and we're, you know, trying to see where we could help. And you came over and you sat beside me, and you said that 3 million people in this country with 500,000 Indigenous. And I went, wow, a native vote, because the elections were happening. And then explain from there what we did, because I took the East Coast and you took the West Coast, and we went on these amazing trips.
Well, this understanding came from my uncle, Vine Deloria Jr., who shared with me in my young days. He said, you know, the number one thing is our challenges in indigenous people is disunity, which has been continuing just like over this pipeline. This is the way the government works, divide and conquer. But he said, you know, if you think about it, and we saw it this last election, he said, if we can come together in unity, not based on personalities, but based on where we stand on issues, that we can swing any election, any place across the Americas where we have the majorities like we have here. And by the way, to really put this in perspective, just in 11 nation states, and there's 34, 11 nation states across the Americas, there's more than 78 million indigenous peoples by UN standards. There's many, many more that identify as indigenous people, but 78 million indigenous people that are recognized as Tsleil-Waututh or other First Nations or nations. And more than 70 million are south of the US border. And so what we did is that because of your work, we said, okay, let's visit with everybody. Let's see if we can come together and develop a unified position, which we did. Then, which you did, you have to tell that story. But the results was, we called a forum and invited all the presidential candidates for the presidency of Panama to come. And we laid out, I remember it so clear, this big hotel was laid out our positions and said, okay, do you agree or not agree? Because we're going to vote with those that agree. Of course, in the end, they all agreed, right? Now, of course, you don't have to understand these. Some of these relatives speak out of both sides of their mouth, especially these politicians. I'm not saying all of them, but many of them. And we got some things, but I think it demonstrated so importantly, we have to come together as Indigenous people and all those relatives, because we're all really Indigenous people of the earth. We've got to come together. That's where we have our 16 principles to foundation, to come together. And in the end, it might take a few more years, but I can tell you, we're coming so close. In the end, there's no power on heaven or earth that's going to stop the rising of Indigenous peoples and all those who awaken that we're all Indigenous peoples of Mother Earth and that our mother must be protected. And so there you went. And by the way, you went right down where you were talking to our dear sister, where they were threatening lives. You went right in the heart of it. And I think the story you have to tell about the way they treasure Mother Earth, because this is something. And by the way, I want to just before you talk about that, son, I want to say too, I feel such sadness for our relatives who are in such poverty. I mean, we have to think about this, such poverty that when these things that destroy Mother Earth, like this pipeline, come along, you know, they're hungry. Oh, this is what the government wants. Oh, you're gonna make all this money. They just want a job. And here we are fighting each other. Same time. This pipeline is such a pitiful, they end up so pitifully. What a waste. What a great waste. Pitiful. And it's got us all at each other, but we're rising above it. So, son, please share what happened when you went down to the south. Those beloved roads.
Well, it was neat because when you came and talked about Native vote, you spoke at that meeting with the chiefs and said, hey, you know, Native vote, come together and make some conditions that you want, recognize the United Nations Declaration as law, move towards green energy initiatives. I remember a couple of those things, and they all said, yeah, we'll do it. And then they said, but we're only half the people, and it would be really helpful if you want to talk to the other half. Then he came over and sat beside me and goes, because I was going to take 6 days for holiday in Panama. And then he said, well, how about I take the East Coast and you take the West Coast, and let's go talk to these chiefs. And nobody knew where I was. And this is crazy because I caught an airplane and then a water taxi. And then we drove up in the mountains for about 6 hours. And I was staying at this place, and a spider bit me. And I was like, I was in this sort of Airbnb, and I was like, oh no, and I was sweating, and my swelled up on my side about this high, this little area. And then I went out and I seen some natives, and I showed them where I got bit, and I grabbed a leaf and I said, I need some medicine. So they went and got some medicine. I don't know where they got duct tape in the middle of nowhere. But they had duct tape and they put it on me. And it was crazy. But when the place that we ended up going to, and this is about their law and what you're talking about. It's good that you talked about spirituality before we get into this. Those people, remember, 17 were murdered when we were there that year, and 150 were injured. And remember, they scooped out their eyes with spoons and tortured them, and because for standing up for their lands. And it really put it in perspective for me when I ended up where I was, and this little guy went by with a machete to get firewood. And I was there 2 hours early for the meeting, and he came back just before the meeting. Took about an hour and a half. and he didn't chop down a tree, and it's lush forest everywhere, trees everywhere. He found one that fell over. He wouldn't chop one down. He wouldn't kill a tree. And he dragged it back, and that's what they cooked our meal with. And they were beautiful people. And then they said, the big chief's going to stay with me. And it was just a humble home. They had a brick wall, straw roof, and sand floor. And that's where we stayed. And I know you went up a safari, up a river. Let's hear about that.
Well, we needed to go up the river by canoe several days. And it was really quite a journey. I just enjoyed myself so much. And we went up and we arrived at this village, and they were so kind. They had constructed a little tent for me, to sleep in. They had kind of their community gathering place. And so, I had this little bit of pup tent, so this mosquitoes wouldn't get me. So I went to sleep there. And what I didn't realize is that sunrise, the primary elder heard an eagle screeching. And he told the whole village about the eagle screeching. Of course, the prophecy eagle and the condor, the Quetzal. Well, here I was sleeping away. I was really tired. The day before, I went swimming in that river. Little did I know it had some of these fish that were not too friendly to you. But I didn't realize how strong the current was. I kind of got carried away. And anyway, somebody else did, so I was able to finally get out. So anyway, I opened my tent up and looked out. There was a whole crowd waiting, this quietly, respectfully waiting to tell me how this eagle had come and screeched. You could hear it. So the elder said, "Oh, we know that what you're bringing is the truth." And so there's still Candido, we know very well, Masua. They're still, to this day, right now, struggling and rising, not only in Panama, but now in Costa Rica. When we were down in Panama at the time, and remember some of the Bribri came in Costa Rica, which they thought they had eliminated indigenous people. They're coming back. El Salvador, where they massacred over 100,000 people because just of their identity. They're rising. They're coming back everywhere, all at once. Indigenous peoples everywhere rising, and so are those relatives of the human family that are beginning to realize, hey, whether I'm from Europe, I'm from Asia, I'm from Africa, I'm from the Pacific Islands, the Arctic, Antarctic, wherever you're from, we're all indigenous people of Mother Earth, and we understand the prior unity and oneness human family in all life, and the hurt of one is a hurt of all. Just like that dear brother demonstrated he would not kill a living tree. And then we see, especially what we can see in this new sea conspiracy, I forget the name of the video, just can't saw it, what they're doing to the oceans. It's just greed in spiritual sickness. So we just did, but this is a lesson we're all learning, and we will come through it. Just like people like Peter. Ben was there before Tush got Ben. Now Peter's there, Wilderness Committee. So that's what I thought. Add that.
As right back to Panama before we jump into a couple of other things, but it was I knew you're in Panama, and then I got a call from my mom, and she's like, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at home." Like, "So you're not in Panama?" And they said, "No." And they said, "Ruben got shot at in Panama." But it was Gary Copeland, who did the wonderful movie Shift of the Ages about the Condor and Eagle. And Auntie called you and said, get to the airport. And that's a crazy story, because when we were there the first time, Sylvia was saying, remember, she said, if I'm going to speak with you and you're going to have our chief, make sure she's safe. You sleep in the same room, all of you. you follow wherever she goes. Don't let her be alone, and keep your cameras there too. And you know, I took it serious, but I didn't know how bad it was until Steve and Ruben got shot at. Share that story, because it was
Sure.
what you're saying is that you know, there's forces that we're up against here in Canada where they're killing things, but down there they're killing people for the same work that we're doing.
Exactly.
And I didn't know how dangerous it was for us. And share that story.
Well, you know, Ruben Langdon, he also played Jake Sully. He was a double for Jake Sully in that movie Avatar, and a lot of other films. Really, really a fine young man. And of course, Toshka Steve Copeland, who made the film Shift of the Ages, about the story of Tata Alejandro, Grand Chief Alejandro, who also came up and visited with up here in Canada, if you remember, at the International Indigenous Leadership Gathering with your Chief Daryl Bob and so all the relatives. Anyway, so what was happening was Tata carries this Mayan staff of authority. It's almost 2,000 years old. And somehow or another, that staff is a long story behind it. That's what Shift the Ages is about the staff and how it returned back to his care. But he wanted to transfer this on to his grandson, Geronimo. The problem is that others, you see, this is why we have to look inside our own communities. That's why my dad always said, you know, son, always know where you're coming from. Always know where you're going, but most of all, know who you're traveling with. Remember, you know, this divide and conquer thing has really gotten us. For instance, when Toshunka Wiko, Crazy Horse, he knew this was going to happen in his vision. He knew it. He was held by his arms by his own people. Two of his close friends held him, but he shoved a bayonet in his back. So and so there was those that that wanted that staff because of feeling that if they could get that staff, they get the same power and authority as Tata Alejandro. But as we well know, son, a pipe, a bundle, is only as sacred as the person holds it. It's only as sacred as the person holds it. You have this illusion because the power comes from the soul, from the heart. This is a representation. But if your soul is not in alignment with this bundle, it's going to go anywhere. Well, anyway, so they said, we've got to find a way to protect this bundle until a bundle transfer can happen, to transfer the staff to the grandson. So they were talking about even us taking it out of the country and holding it until that time. So they said, you know, called and said, we're going to take a plane down there. I told my beloved wife, and she said, Phil, she's always been, she said, Phil, this is going to be very dangerous. And I said, well, you know, Toshka Ruben, he's a karate expert. She says, bullets don't address karate. So I called back, said, oh, everything's fine, no problem. So sure enough, we went down there. We drove from Guatemala City, drove up in the mountains. And when we came in this little town where Tata lived, there was not a soul in the streets. But there have been so many killings, millions have been killed. I said, you know, it doesn't seem like anybody's watching us, but everybody's watching us. So sure enough, we went to the top of the hill to Tata's home. Went inside, he was he was really, really sick. I mean, he was on the edge. And so we had a sacred pipe with us, and we laid it on his chest. And we prayed. We have us all in film, it's going to come up. We prayed, and sure enough, we came outside, there was a double rainbow above his home, double rainbow. Anyway, my wife said, you know, you should get to the airport right away. And they said, oh no, we want to travel a bit more. She said, go. So that night we stayed there, and next morning went to see Tata. The next day, here he was, back in strength. And he's really happy. The transfer ceremony happened. We videoed it, so nobody could take it. And we had the footage with us. We didn't have to take the staff, we had the footage with us. So we headed into Guatemala City. Took them a little while because we had such a cheap airline. You know, they brought me in a wheelchair, like I had to get home. So I flew out. Well, sure enough, the next day when Tushka, Ruben, and Steve were in Guatemala City, right where we would have been. I would have been right there. I kind of sat in the back, and they'd sit. Ruben would be driving, Steve would be over here. They'd change. I was kind of right in the back seat. And all of a sudden, and here was a lot of cars going around. All of a sudden, they felt these bullets. About 7 of them hit the car. The first one went right through the. I'm going to hit me right in the back. One grazed Ruben, and these were 9mm bullets, about $10 a piece, out of the clear blue sky. Of course, that's all on film. It just turned out too so funny that Ruben was just finished. He just finished Devil May Cry 5. He plays kind of the character in that. Of course, here they made global headlines because they said there's attempted murder on Devil May Cry 5. Ruben. So they got a lot of publicity on that. But thank the Creator that my beloved wife said, leave. And I did. Because, the work, this is the thing, son. I say this to all our young water protectors and so forth. We have to know when the cry of truth is raised, so is the cry of denial. When we stand up for the truth, we will suffer pain. We'll suffer many things, sometimes from our very closest relatives. Yes, there we are in Panama. There we are. There's Tata there. And Helen Samuels, our great translator, has a brother sitting next to Tata. Tata has a hat on, dear brother from Peru. And of course, the head chief of the Kuna Nation down off the San Blas Islands in Cunayala, off the coast of Panama. Great people, great people. Every year, we were witnessing this. Every year, they reenact how they were able to dispel the Spaniards who came and tried to cut their hair, rape the women, dispel them off those islands, and have retained probably some of the greatest sovereignty across the Americas we have as Indigenous people. Wonderful people. Wonderful people.
Yeah, thank you. There's so much we could talk about. The Green Shake of the United Emirates, or Stevie Wonder, or everybody, Tim Robbins, and everybody who you met along the way, royalty and leadership all over is pretty neat to travel with you. Like Brazil, I know when we were there, if you remember, those 2 brothers presented with us, and I was pretty new to the environmental movement, and they said, for doing what you're doing and what I'm doing right now, my life's in jeopardy. And remember, we got home and they called us and they said, yeah, they were murdered 2 days later after we got home. They're trying to get home, and but they still stand up. They still, Cedars said, he said, we're lucky a bit. We have a little bit of freedom of speech. There they don't. But still, they put it in the perspective of that guy wouldn't kill a tree because he loved it, and that was Natsamat, one heart, one mind, one prayer, or Mitakyasi, we're all related. And that's more than just the people, that's the plants, the animals, and the trees. And that's why that guy wouldn't kill the tree. And he loved it so much, he put his life in jeopardy to protect it. And that, like, during that time, so many of them were in danger, and they still are. They're still in danger. When we go down there, they feel a little bit safe because we bring cameras and media and people, and the story's going to get out, so they want to try to make it look safe. But even then, when we went to take pictures, they were really scared, and they said, just take a picture and get in the car and let's leave. And then they got scared because they saw us and they started following us for a couple of miles, remember. And and it's not too different from here. We've been to Standing Rock together. we've been to supporting Winona together, and Keystone and Enbridge and Energy East with Chief Serge Simon. Daryl Bobb's here. He came down to Yankton Sioux to initiate the Cowboy Indian Alliance that turned into Standing Rock, and but a lot of great things happened. So what kind of messages would you give some of the people that are watching? Because it's a lot of environmental people watching that care about the earth, and there's people doing a lot of things, but not saying everybody has to go down in Panama and help. We could help right here against the TMX pipeline, against all this pollution. What kind of messages, especially of longevity and spiritual faith, would you want to give to the people listening?
Right. I think first of all, one of the things I've learned in 76 years and I'm working on right now is we can only take people to where we're at, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. So our own taking care of ourselves is not selfishness, meaning that we need to be able to eat good food as best we can. Now, I understand that's difficult because many of our people are in poverty. Best we can. That means we have to create our gardens, do whatever we can, eat our natural foods. So eating. Also, the spiritual, of course, is the whole foundation. Because, in a way, son, and I'm going to share this little story. Somebody asked me, well, what's the purpose of life? And so I just want to reflect, when we were born in this physical place of time and space in our mother's womb, we're microscopic, literally microscopic. And they've now been able to photograph when that happens, conception happens, there's a light. So we know when we're born in this physical plane of time and space, we're born as sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. Like Chief Seattle said, there's no death to change the worlds. And so in our mother's womb, we grow our physical arms and legs and eyes and ears. And certain stages of that growth, we take on, in that process, we take on all kinds of different forms. In fact, at a certain stage, physicians have told me, unless you're a trained physician, you can't tell the difference between a pig fetus and a human fetus. But we're growing our arms and legs and eyes and ears. What for? To prepare us for this physical plane of time and space. So sure enough, in time, and by the way, our indigenous people, we had songs we sang for children in the mother's womb because we knew that sound enhanced them. Women were encouraged to touch soft things and smell good things and to think only peaceful thoughts. And that's how we cared for especially new life coming. And sure enough, we don't know exactly when, just like we don't know exactly when we go to the other side camp, contractions begin. The water breaks. Again, water. In fact, so interesting, the amniotic fluid is the same salt content as the ocean. So literally, here's the duplication of the ocean. And then we begin our journey into this physical plane of time and space. And it's, by the way, it's not an easy journey, having been there to witness my daughters and son born. It's a strong journey. And I got to just have no words to say in honor of women for this. And sure enough, we're born in this physical world of time and space. We have that first breath. And we die from the womb world. We leave behind our womb suit, the afterbirth. And we're given this earth suit, I call it, earth suit. So what's our purpose here? Our purpose here is to grow our spiritual arms and legs and eyes and ears, to prepare us for the next stage of our journey. And that's about becoming more loving, more kind, more compassionate, more forgiving, more wise, more courageous, more just. Now, I feel sorry for those that raise their children, that the purpose of this life is to gain material things. become wealthy, to have big houses, all that. Because, you know, this world of physical time and space is limited, finite. So no matter how much you try, you're never going to be the richest or the whatever. Pitiful to see people caught up in that. We know that the spiritual qualities, the spiritual worlds are infinite. We can go for 100 years and never become as loving, kind, compassionate, so forth. So we're growing our spiritual arms and legs here. And sure enough, time is going to come for every one of us. Like my dad said, always used to tease me before he died. He said, you know, son, none of us are going to get out of here alive. He'd laugh. It's true. But, you know, we're preparing, because when we step on that world of lights, those sacred worlds, it's the spiritual qualities we develop. So I would say the number one thing in this struggle we have, it's a spiritual struggle we're in. It's about developing our spiritual selves so that we can truly make the path visible by walking it. We are the curricula. You know, they talk about curriculum, videos. We are the power that comes through us. We are, to the degree we can purify our hearts and minds to become, you know, through which, you know, hollow bones through which the pith of self has been blown. So we can be, you might say, the minaret, the flute of the divine mysteries in sacredness. It comes right here through us, together. Because when we come together, it's amplified 100 times more than just individually by themselves. I'd say that. So to tend to our spiritual dimension, and as well, we're really looking now at how can we bring together science and spirituality. You know, science, Western science without spirituality is like a Frankenstein, literally. But spirituality without some reason becomes fanaticism. So that's what we're doing with our Four Worlds Elder Health Program, and I know you're doing. That is, how do we bring our cutting edge breakthrough systemic functional medicine understandings now in Western science, as well as our own indigenous understanding, our own plant medicines, our own understandings, because with this, and we're doing it, as you're doing it, you know, because that, you know, we know is a way we can help preserve all these elders' wisdom who are being lost every day. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I can tell you from my own experience this last August, you know, we can turn this around, and we are turning it around 100,000%. The other thing is, the last thing I would say, and there's many things to say on this, the most greatest sickness is infecting our communities. It's backbiting, gossip, jealousy, slander. You know, that is kills people, just like you put a gun in their head. Like I remember I was at a peyote meeting, 1987, at their Hobima, and I'd been invited over. And after the meeting, I saw this elder heal this wonderful, wonderful elder who was diagnosed to die of cancer. The next day, she's up doing business. But we went and asked him, my friends Sam and I went and asked him, he said, let's go ask him, what is bad medicine? What's bad medicine? It's Navajo, the Dene medicine man. He said, my pitiful work of the last 50 years, I've found there's 4 kinds of bad medicine. One is bad thoughts. If you're thinking bad thoughts about others or yourself, you're using bad medicine. He said the second thing is, probably the worst, is backbiting, gossip, and slander, including listening to it. The third kind, and you've seen it, is dirty looks, where people, you be going along and look at somebody, that energy, dirty looks. And the other one is just plain bad words to people. This is bad medicine. It's not somebody sticking pins in a doll. You know, But I mean, of course, you could do that and think that's bad thoughts. So stay away from that. Stay away from it. Because disunity is the disease of community. And it's through our unity that no matter what challenge we face, we will, as prophesied, overcome it. So those are little messages I would pass on. There's so many more wiser relatives than me that have many more wiser messages, but those are the basics.
Yeah. I think of what you're saying, and it's neat the way this rolled out. You know, we are an environmental show, but the backbone behind what we do and to Tsleil-Waututh is working within these cultural and spiritual principles of what you're talking about. That's why we did the 1,200-page assessment, the spill analysis, the clean analysis, the economic study, the air quality study, working with world-renowned scientists and economists and experts and archaeologists and all of those things. And then pretty soon, we've been doing it for so long, Papa, that some of our own people became archaeologists. Some of our own people became lawyers during this fight to help work in this fight. And it's a huge, big team that work according to the same principles. Those same principles. It's like, how easy would it be for my nation and some of these other nations to say, okay, give us $50 million and you could build that pipeline. That'd be so easy for some of the nations in poverty, some of the nations that need counseling and therapy and food and housing and clothes. But it's these principles you're talking about that built up who we are. But you look at you started the show by talking about the generational pain through residential school. 150,000 plus kids went to school and got abused. And my mom remembers when this little 5-year-old kid is being murdered in residential school. My two older brothers went to residential school. And all that hurt and pain was healed through these principles you're talking about. So now it's these principles that healed us, we use to govern ourselves.
Yes. So
when people don't understand, say, why don't you just let the pipeline go through? It's not within our law of our connection. You know, we're that little man was in Panama that didn't kill a tree, but we do love what we have here.
Yes.
And it's within these principles that healed us. When we didn't have anything and we was against a lot of practice our culture and spirituality, we still were in the forest. We're still in the woods. We're still fishing. We're still canoeing. And that was medicine to us. And, you know, and now you look at science and we base a lot of our studies on this, that even the nutrients and enzymes that trees share with one another. And they share those same nutrients and enzymes with us when we walk through the woods. Scientifically proven now. Things that we've known for a long time. So I thank you for saying those things. And that's what I think of when you talk. And then the medical things, like we're getting really close to working with one another with some of my good friends who are in business. And I love the Dr. Lee Samuel, who's a holistic psychologist,
Okay.
a certified holistic psychologist.
He's actually a psychiatrist. He's actually an
Psychiatrist, yes. And he brings people to deal with their innermost fears through ceremony, like what we do, and they want a partner. Mm-hmm. And after they do the ceremony to help set their vision of what they're going to do, they go to Wild Health. Mm-hmm. And you created a partnership with them that we want to be partners with our colleagues as well as Wild Health. They take your DNA testing, they figure out your metabolic typing, and then they feed your body the nutrients and vitamins that are missing in accordance to your metabolic typing and ozone therapy. And they take a liter of your blood and they put it back and help you. And then from there, with those two processes happening, then you move into the naturopath clinic. And then they really tell you what is good for your metabolic typing. Because remember the pyramid when we're in school and they had the food pyramid? That don't make no sense. There's a book called Metabolic Typing, and they said the closer you are to the equator, the more wheats and fruits you eat. The further you go north or south, the more fat you eat. Here in my lineage, only seasonal fruits and vegetables, but primarily meat. But I'm excited that you did that, and I'm going to do that too with you. As soon as the border opens up, I'm going to head down and go through the experience that you went through, and you know, and it's about it. You mentioned it. You said create longevity by taking care of yourself, spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and take care of yourself. So I appreciate you bringing up those things. And did you want to say anything else?
I just want to say that we have two partners down in one in Tennessee, the Maxwell Clinic. That's Dr. David Hasse, who half of his clientele are other doctors. And there's an area of medicine, it's called a new emerging called functional medicine or systems medicine, which is really essentially beginning to see the world as we do as Indigenous people. And then there's a wild health clinic in Tennessee.
Nashville.
Yeah, in Tennessee. Excuse me, in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky. Lexington, Kentucky, and then Nashville. So
Yes.
they're our partners, along with the Clairogenic Family Foundation, which Dr. Samuel Lee is part of. And they really, truly understand and honor and respect. This is why we waited for so long to institute our Global Center for Indigenous Sciences. You know, we actually started that project in 1989. The elders said, wait until you find the medical doctors who are understanding the holistic, truly understanding our Indigenous perspective, because we need to work together. You know, science and spirituality have to come together, and that's what we found. And I can say, you know, I really, you know, I could see the end gate there. And then that was about 200 pounds when I started, maybe over 200, beginning of August, and I'm down to, I've gone down to 158 pounds, but I hit pretty well every day. I check myself about 165, 164 pounds. But it's a combination of healing, because you know, so often because of this intergenerational trauma, and it goes on, the disunity and the backbiting, all these kind of things that go on, you know, it hurts our soul. And so many times, I'm sure I certainly had this experience. I'm not saying completely over it. We say, oh, I'm gonna start walking. We walk 4 or 5 days, then we stop. Or I'm gonna start eating right. And then we start, before you know it, we fall back. Because the foundation, first of all, is the healing of our souls, the hurt of our spirit. Once that happens, then we add the, you know, nutritional dimensions. And by the way, what I love about the understanding of DNA is every one of us is a unique human being. Every single one of us. You could go to every granary in the world, every single one. You'd never find two pieces of grain the same. You can go down along the beach, right where you live, as you know, Tushka. Every one of those pieces of sand, there's not one of them like another piece of sand. They all have the stamp of the oneness of our Creator, just like each and every one of our souls does. We're all unique. We're all sovereignties, ancient and perishable, everlasting, unique. So when a medical system is just simply focused on disease, and these big pharmaceutical companies, which, by the way, have more cases against them legally than any other people around. I mean, they're really, really sick. Although they're supposed to be healing sickness, you know. So again, that's what we have now. But I believe our Indigenous peoples, along with others that are joining us, other scientists, medical technicians, medical people, we're developing a whole new system of medicine. Spiritual, physical medicine is coming together.
Nice.
And, yes.
I look forward to that, and I really hope that we partner our companies together to make something beautiful happen for our people. We have a couple of questions. I think Christine, if you want to unmute yourself and ask Phil
Yeah.
Lane.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, Phil. I talked to our friend Steve Copeland the other day, and I was wondering if you have any other film projects in progress.
Yes, yes. There's a project being worked on now called Horse Thief, Shunkmanu.
What's
And
that about?
well, there's actually two parts. One's a series, kind of a Netflix type series that goes over some wild days from when I was in high school. This trip we made for a year trip to Europe, which was really quite something. The other is a story of this journey of the last 53 years. The journey that began, really in the depths of alcoholism and drug abuse and unhealthy relationships and so forth and so on. And then, of course, all of us, the spiritual rebirth when I came in contact with this very powerful spiritual teachings and, kind of the journey that we make. And when I was 12, my father kept telling me, he said, son, if you're a good boy, I'm going to take you and get your name from my grandfather, Chante Washte, Strong Heart. And my dad was born in Wakpala in Standing Rock Reservation. And so sure enough, we went there to Wakpala. We stayed at my grandmother, Martina Sherwood's home there at Sherwood Corners. And we got on horseback. I'll never forget this, on horseback. We rode up to see old Lala Strongheart Shante Washte. Remember on the way, my uncle, Earthly Strongheart, was a rattlesnake came in our path of a horse, and he got off and killed that rattlesnake and gave me the rattles. I still have. We rode up, and here was way up, no telephones, no running water, but here was the old gentleman, Walter, sitting there. And he'd been gassed in World War I by the Germans. One eye was gassed. He was just sitting there, and in those old days, this old gentleman liked to had little tweezers, and they pulled their whiskers. He was sitting. We came up. Of course, there's just four of us, humble place. Of course, we always knew wherever we go, my father taught this lesson, you always bring gifts, we bring groceries. So we brought the groceries and so forth. And he said, he said, so we sat there. He said, okay, I'm going to give you a name. He sang a song. He said, he said, I'm going to give you my father's name, Shunkmanu. Shunkmanu means, in the short form, horse thief. In the long form, it means a leader of warriors who takes the enemy's best horses. And so in a way, as you see how I look, people could take me for Italian, Jewish, Spanish. Of course, when I went to Africa, they didn't just take me as African. But in a way, I've been able to travel kind of incognito, all these places. And so I really got a chance to hear what people really think. I remember in my young days when I was a bar, I had this feeling I didn't like people who were racist. But I could tell that when somebody this guy was kind of a racist guy, started talking about our native indigenous people, I'd say, oh yeah, those Indians, or and I get him really going. Really get him saying all these nasty things. I said, you know something? I'm going to tell you something. I'm one. Bam! When I hit him. That's how I was in my young days. But so that's Shunkmanu. So there's a Shunkmanu. The one is really going to be a fun. It's really stranger than fiction. We took off from Walla Walla, my friend Mike Friedman and I. He's turned 18. We hitchhiked from Walla Walla first to New York City. Took us 44 rides, 4.5 days later, we arrived in Staten Island Ferry. Stayed in the 38th Street YMCA. That's where I got a chance to go to hear Joey D and the Starlighters. That's where the twist was done. That's where I met Richie Havens at the FWII, which is right across in Greenwich Village, right across the street from the cafe. Why Not? Richie Havens was, of course, played in that big thing they had. Anyway, it's about this journey we went over to Europe and all the adventures we had and so forth. That's the series.
Nice. Good. We have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Who is that? Is Christine or Peter had a question?
Yeah. I had a question for you about, this is streaming out on so many different websites and all this connectivity. And it's been a year where we're all, isolated inside our homes and looking for that. So I'm wondering, what's the role of sort of all this connectivity and the amazing technologies and digital technologies we have that it is playing and can play in your in the spiritual revolution that you've been a part of?
Well, it's key. In 1975, we went down to a place called Sweat House Lodge. First place they ever used the Inikaka, the Sweat Lodge, to deal with alcoholism and drug abuse. There was two elders, Abe Burnstick and Eddie Belrose there. And among many prophecies, they said to us, someday you young men will be able to look before you and see people on the other side of Mother Earth and talk to them. And they went and described every detail of the internet, every detail. We had no idea what we were talking about. So I was a professor at the University of Lethbridge. It's the 80s, early 90s. And I remember, even though I only still only type with one finger, as soon as I heard about the internet, I said, aha, exactly what they were talking about. And so since that time, we've been drawing upon the everywhere spirit made physically manifest in the earth. This is going to be, whether people like it or not, our whole way of being on this Mother Earth is dramatically changing right now. And by the way, this idea that we're somehow out of this thing, we're going to have to, that's why I'm saying this foolishness about these pipelines. It's not just spiritually and environmentally a complete and total violation of Mother Earth. It makes completely no economic sense whatsoever. It's pouring dollars down the tube, billions of dollars, in which we have people starving all over, not just Canada, but Mother Earth. It is a violation of everything that's sacred. Even it doesn't make economic sense whatsoever. So the internet, that's why we're building right now as we speak. I just had a meeting this afternoon. We're building the backbone of the first digital nation upon this Mother Earth. 78 million Indigenous people. We're rising, and we're going to be able to create a nation state. The Indigenous people of the Americas are the fastest growing population in the whole hemisphere and the youngest population. And as we begin to communicate with other members of the human family, by the way, I'm just pleased it's not exclusionary. As people awaken to who they're Indigenous, this is going to become a wave, an ocean of unity. It's going to wash away all this foolishness.
We have 5 more minutes left, but I'm curious, are you talking a bit about the digital fourth way and deep social networks? Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Back in 2009, Brother John Raymond and I wrote a paper called Deep Social Networks and the Digital Fourth Way. That we call the fourth way, which really came out of was gathering the elders. One way that people throughout history have been oppressed and have responded is through assimilation. We assimilate. We get this idea of, I just dress up in a suit and tie, and by the way, it's all right to wear a suit and tie if you want to, but I'm talking about this idea of, if I just become just like the oppressor. Well, that doesn't work. No happiness there. The second way is resignation, just giving up, falling back. Maybe you fall into, organized crime, whatever you do, but you fall, especially our relatives, just give up. And I can understand alcohol, drugs. The third way, now understand, this is not the same as standing up for justice, but we just decide we're going to fight no matter what. Fight physically. Well, but the fourth way is the one we're working on. It's a spiritual path, rebuilding broken trusts, reconciliation, but based in our spiritual values. Based in it. That's the digital fourth way. And that's what's happening here, as well as the work we've done in Southeast Asia, in many places. This is what we're doing here. Just think, people are listening to us everywhere on Mother Earth. Just like the elders said, Eddie Belrose and Abe Bursick, 1975, they said this is exactly what would happen, and it's happened.
Nice. Okay, I think, Papa, thanks for coming in. This is the most I've seen you in a couple of weeks. But we talk often, so I'll make sure I get out there now. It's nice and warm. We could visit out in the 20-degree heat this week. But thanks for coming on. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for all of our Zoom guests that from our spiritual family that wanted to pop in and be our audience in Zoom. Thank you, Peter, for giving us an update on what's going on, and we'll share more about insurance and our brother in the tree. And thank you, Christine, for
Thank you.
for Sacred Ecology and some of the, we put in the post, Christine, if you caught it, that we'll give some updates on a couple things and a couple of the stories that we shared, and that will hopefully get posted on Sacred Ecology in the next little bit. So if you want to tune that into that and check it all out. So thank you.
Thank you. And son, we had a couple of minutes of prayer.
2 minutes.
Yeah, a prayer I learned down in Bolivia I want to share with you. For me.
Sure.
Bring us our hearts together. Here's this unity prayer. I love this prayer. It says it all. Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal unto them thy great purpose. May they follow in thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps with the light of knowledge and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord. Haulimi chante washtealo, shumkmano he meodo, chinupasapa he meodo, haulimi chante washte. Have a most beautiful day. And thank you so much, son. Thank you for all that you do. I can go to sleep and not wake up in the morning, go to the other side camp and know the future is well taken care of. Well taken by all of our young people. Thank you so much. Thank you.